to see everybody taking the time to come out. I know this wasn't really publicized that well until last Thursday that we were going to do this. So thanks everyone across the country. We've got the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. So
Great. Let's just remind everybody to go on mute, eh, Mark?
yeah, unless everybody's going to mute, Jeff and I included. We'll...
All right, do you have that now, Jeff?
Yes, sir. We've got it, Paul.
Okay. We ready to roll?
Yes, sir.
Everybody can hear me?
Think so. Yep.
All right. So for those who don't know me, which is just about everybody, I've been doing this for about 35 years. I started off in my basement doing some basic repairs and very crude fitting, and then got obsessed with it and soaked up every bit of training and every bit of knowledge and every bit of course that is available to man pretty well. I have been, I'm a current certified and factory authorized and trained fitter for Callaway, Cobra, Mizuno, TaylorMade, Titleist, Tour Edge, soon to be another couple on top of that. And I am a top 100 fitter for North America for Callaway. So for that designation, I was in the top 100 custom orders for sales last year out of 8,000 accounts for North America. So that's, that's a lot of traffic. I am inducted into the Callaway Staff Professional Hall of Fame, and a lot of that is based on knowledge and fitting and stuff like that. So that's enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some scenarios and some things that may not be your standard normal fitting information that you will see when you do some fitting courses. These are things that really only come to people after they've been doing it a while, and you kind of get the nuances, just like teaching. You start off and you think you're really good, and then 10 years later, you look back and you go, oh my God, I can't believe I ever said that. So fitting is the same thing. It just keeps evolving all the time. So I'm going to get going. After each little section, I'm going to allow for 2 or 3 minutes of questions. And I want to keep that short because I've got a lot of content to cover. And then at the end, I'll take questions. And if we run out of time then, you can forward your questions to me. I'll make my email available, and I'll either call you back or I'll email you with whatever questions you have once I get time. All right, so here we go. So how can club fitting knowledge help your students? And you don't need to be an expert to recognize when something is not right. For instance, you're out on a driving range and Mrs. Jones is there, and you look down, you're trying to teach her, and she's got her father's castaway 1971 Wilson staff blades with 50-year-old leather wrap grip on it that feels like a piece of lumber. Right off the bat, we need to do something. We need to put her into some equipment, and some of this is going to talk about what you can do and then what you should recognize that you can pass on to a fitter. And I strongly suggest getting yourself aligned with a good fitter if you're not one. Somebody that you can trust, and have your student go back and forth, because your goal really is to perfect their game. And if you can't do it yourself, then it's always great to open the window for somebody else to do it. So this is my agenda. We're going to talk about how I start with people, an interview and a warm-up, whether it's a lesson or a fitting, understanding lie angles, talking about some swing weight, set makeup, which is how we put together our bag, what we keep in it. I'm going to do a little bit of a different take on wedges that you may find interesting. And then we're going to talk about understanding driver settings, all those adapter sleeves, making sure we know exactly what they do. And then I'm going to finish off with a fairly in-depth putter one that, to me, is kind of probably worth the whole time sitting in on this. So whether I have a fitting or a lesson, I'll always start the exact same way. I'll start with a pre-session interview. And this is when the person comes in, they're putting their shoes on, they're getting their coat off. And it's just a casual conversation and talking to them about, average scores, shots, tendencies. If I'll ask them, if you hit 50 balls and 5 of them are bad, what would the 5 tend to look like? Is there patterns? Is there a strength and weakness? What's your current game like? What's the best you've ever been? How long ago was it? Or on your way up or on your way down? and then have a look at their current clubs and ask them about them and talk to them about which ones in your bag do you absolutely love and are there any there that you avoid. So it's just kind of getting an idea of what's going on with the golfer before they start. And then I'll always send people for a warm-up, and the warm-up is more of a distraction. I'm getting them to warm up, and while they do that, I'll talk to them about anything except for what they're doing. I'll talk to them about hockey or golf courses that they play, or find out if we have anyone in common that we play with. This is for them to get comfortable and feel relaxed with the process and not get a feeling that they're being assessed, which is what's happening. I'm standing back, and while I'm talking about all these random things, I'm really making note on what's going on. I'm trying to get an idea of their tendencies. Oops, sorry. Are they someone who is very quick? Are they grabbing balls and raking them in and hitting them as fast as they can? Are they paying attention to their grip and their posture and their alignment? Are they going right to a driver? Are they hitting things? So I'm just doing an assessment to find out a little bit about them. But the trick is making sure they don't think they're being assessed, because especially if they come for a lesson or fitting, we all seen students who get anxiety and they think, oh, I'm really nervous here with you. And that's not a good way to start off anything. After that is finished, I'll make sure that we review data, and I'll do this with lessons and fittings. Having all the data at our disposal is great, but if the student doesn't understand what it is, then it goes over their head and they don't really buy into the system. So I'll take 5 minutes and I'll make sure that they understand what swing path means. What does it mean when a negative comes up? What does descent angle mean? What does strike point mean? Ball speed versus club speed, just kind of educating them so that as we get into the session and I make comments, they are going to be able to buy into it and be a part of it rather than just sitting there and taking it all in and going over their head and then finding out at the end that they didn't understand any of it. So it's the same as a lesson. We're making sure that everybody is understanding what we're saying. Any questions to this point?
If you do have a question, just hit the space bar and then you can ask away.
Okay. All right. Nothing there. We'll get into the guts of it. Lie angle. So a lie angle on a golf club is the relationship of the club face sole to the shaft and how that sits on the ground. So if you think of it as a hockey stick, the blade sits down flat or it sits upright. And lie angle has a huge influence on the orientation of the club face. And that means that it has a huge influence on the start line and the efficiency of contact. And it can also have a big factor of the strike location of the club face at impact. Now, here is a couple of things that people make mistakes of when they start. And I was guilty of this when I started also. It's just, it makes sense. When you're not aware of things, certain things make sense that aren't true. Lie angle should never, ever be determined, discussed, or even considered at address position. So we all see that all the time. Someone's standing there, their toe is up in the air, and they say, oh, my toe is up in the air, I need to put down. Well, what it's doing at address position has absolutely no relationship to where it will be at impact due to shaft deflection, dynamic movement of the golfer, or considering the actual ball flight. So what you see at address position should never be determining or even a factor of whether someone needs a lie adjustment. And lie adjustments and lie angles are completely dependent and codependent on length. You can't fit one and leave the other one alone. If you have a set of clubs and you change length, then the lie angle is the effective lie angle of how that sits is going to change. And if you change lie angle, the effective length is going to change. So for instance, if we have a club and it's perfect length for us, and then we add 3 inches to it, well, realistically, what happens is people keep their hands and their posture the same, and the club goes out farther away from them. And when it does, the toe goes up in the air. So if I add length, I usually have to flatten. And if I pull that club short and move my hands down the shaft and brought it into me, then the toe would be down. So you can't do one without considering the other, and they come together and they're inseparable. With lie angles, just like shaft flexes and just like ball grips and stuff, there are no industry standards. There's no rule that says a stock lie angle has to be 60 or 61 degrees. These vary by probably 1.5 to 2 degrees from company to company. For instance, Mizuno traditionally has very flat lie angles. Somebody else might have very upright. So if somebody has a lie angle and they change their clubs and they say, my last clubs were 2 degrees upright, I need these 2-degree upright. Well, they may not. It's in a reference to what the actual lie angle was rather than the setting of 2 degrees flat. It doesn't mean anything. Easiest way to think of this is to think that if you wear a size 9 shoe, that you will wear a size 9 in every single brand around the world. We know that that won't make sense. So there are many different varieties, just like flex in a shaft. A stiff flex doesn't mean that it's exactly the same stiffness as another shaft somewhere else. So here's your standard picture of lie angles. Now, the thing with lie angles is that because of the face has loft, if you tilt the face backwards and you put a T in the middle of the face, it's going to point straight if the lie angle is neutral. So that's at front. But because of that loft, when you raise the toe or raise the heel, the orientation of the face changes. Now, that loft is the key issue. If you take a sheet of plywood and put a peg out through it, and that's standing straight up vertical, if you rotate that heel and toe up and down, the center doesn't change. But if you lay that piece of plywood back on an angle and change heel and toe, that orientation changes significantly. So when a lie is upright, it points to the left. And I'm sorry, but for all of these conversations, when I say left and right, I'm going to just talk about right-handed golfers. Okay. When the score lines at the moment of impact are parallel to the ground, which is what the middle one is, that will point to the center. And when they're toe down and slanted that way, it'll point to the right. Now, this part is pretty well generally accepted, and this is a really basic part of lie angle that everyone pretty well understands. But we get into some nuances from here on that make it a little bit different. So we want to be able to look at our students and kind of determine whether they need some help, whether they have fitting, and this is where we get into it. Now, just as I said about these being right-handed golfers, we're also going to talk a lot in generalities. I know that there's always exceptions because of people's dynamics of how they swing, but these are generally accepted rules, and when they're particulars, I'll talk about particulars. So when a lie angle is too flat, these usually occur. Club face is oriented right, even when appearing square. You can have the bottom edge of the club, your leading edge, perfectly square to, or perfectly square perpendicular to your target line. But if you turn the toe down, it will orient itself to the right. So you can appear to be square, but the face is pointing right. Because that toe is down, the toe hits the turf, there's an impediment of speed there, the toe slows down, the heel keeps moving, shots go off to the right. Now, what I have seen over the years is when somebody has a severely flat lie angle and they keep pushing balls to the right, if you look at their data, sometimes their face is square and their swing path is good. They mistake that with the need for more closure. And then they start putting in hand turns. They start putting in rotation that they never needed. And now we end up with an extra problem that is created from a mechanical problem. So there's something to look at. If someone is pushing balls around and all of a sudden they start pulling them, hooking them, they may be making adjustments for something that is a lie angle and they've built in an extra issue. And then conversely, when it's too upright, what will normally happen is that the face will be oriented left even when it's appearing square and even when it looks square down on the score lines. That causes the heel to dig in, the heel slows down, the face keeps going, the left swings around, and they get pulls. Now, the difference between an upright and a flat is usually when it's upright, you'll tend to hit a lot of thin shots. You know, the toe is up in the air. Most golfers will hit toe versus heel. So when you raise the toe up, you will hit a lot of toe shots and get them thin. And now the reverse problem is there, but it's a similar problem. The player can mistake that pull flight for need for less closure. Now they start holding off on their club and they start kind of steer things, and then they lose another mechanical part of their swing. And, you know, this is them building in a mistake to compensate compensate for a mistake of a club design for them. Now, we want to be able to get into diagnosing whether someone has a bad lie angle on their club. There's a few different ways to do it, and there's a couple of really accepted general ways, and I want to talk about them. This one here is probably the most common one that people see. It's the lie board. Everyone has seen this probably 100 times. You've got a black carbon lie board. You put tape on the sole. You hit a ball off the sole. It leaves a mark on the heel and gives you an indication on whether you're heel down or toe down or through the middle. And this one's been around forever. However, there's an extreme problem with this one. It is not very accurate for determining lie angles. It's not used by a lot of really good fitters anymore for a couple of reasons. One is that a severe outside to in swing path or over the top will always hit toe down. So somebody is swinging toe down, somebody swinging outside in and steep, their toe hits, you adjust it up. They keep swinging over the top. The toe will keep hitting. The next thing you know, you're reading 8 and 9 degrees upright, and you've almost got a 90-degree shaft intersection. The other thing is that when you have a severe closed club face, you will get toe down, and that'll give you a bad reading. So you could have changing a lie angle because of someone's face rotation. A lot of people also have real issues hitting off lie boards, especially if they're new to golf or if they're intimidated. They see this board down there and they think it's going to hurt. And they change their descent angle, they change everything. They may hit it thin, they may hit it fat. So the lie board is not the best way by any means. Here's an example. Here is my club. It's set up. Both of them are exactly 59.9 degree lie angle. The one on the left is only reading 59 because sometimes the camera doesn't pick up an LED light, but that says 59.9. The one on the right is 59.9. All I've done on the right is rotate the toe in. I have not changed the lie angle of that shaft, but you can clearly see the difference in what an impact would give you. Look, the one on the left, parallel score lines. The one on the right, completely different. Those score lines are running upwards to the right. So they're both the same lie angle. Closed club face will give me a toe down reading. I start adjusting it, and it just throws the golfer out of whack. So lie boards, while they have their place, are not a really good scenario for fitting lie. Then about 10 years or so ago, this one started to become really popular, which is the ball and tape and a stripe on the ball. So you would take a golf ball and use a dry erase marker or a Sharpie and draw a vertical line on it. Set that ball up on the driving range with the stripe straight up and down so that the club face is going to make impact with it. And then you would leave a line on the tape versus how the club head was oriented at the moment it hit the ball. So if we were to look at this sticker and we went to the far left red one, well, we look at that line. Now that line was caused by a ball that was vertical. So we would have to rotate that toe up to replicate where that head was at impact. So now we can see that that would be way up and we'd have to go flat. And then on the other side, it'd be the same thing. In order to make that far line vertical to match the stripe, I would have to bring that toe way down. So it shows me where it is. So this gives us an idea. It's a little bit more dynamic. Golfers are hitting a ball outside. They're not using the lie board. They're not intimidated to it. And it's a little bit more accurate. But there's a downside to this one also. And these things are really important because you can get stuck on a particular thing and not realize that there are faults built into it. And you can go for years doing things until somebody points it out to you, and then it makes so much sense. Putting a ball with a vertical stripe on it. Well, when we think about lie angle, you're really thinking about normally 1 or 2 or 3 degrees at the most. I don't think most people play much more than that, 3 degrees upright or flat. It'd be very uncommon. So that means you need to place your ball at exactly 90 degrees with that stripe up or down. If you're trying to visualize and eyeball a stripe, well, you can't see 87 degrees versus 90. So you're already off 3 degrees. So you're already going to get a strange reading if it's not 100% straight up and down. So, you know, I use a laser level if I'm doing this to make sure that my stripe is hit. There's also an issue of if you bring your club into the ball extremely outside in or inside out, well, you're not hitting the back of the ball dead on. You're hitting the side. You're now putting gear effect. You're moving that ball and rotating it circularly. And now the stripe is not where it was when it started. So once again, there's issues, and both of these can be used. And sometimes you use both of them together to see if you get the same reading. The other one with using the stripe on the ball, marking it on with a marker, is that you can't use it on a simulator by any means. And a lot of us do our fittings inside. You can't hit an inked ball into somebody's screen without getting banned for life if you do that regularly. Now, the ultimate way to do this, and the most difficult for most people because it involves machinery, is using a loft and lie machine that you can make spot adjustments to the client's clubs. I have an appointment tomorrow morning where I'm doing one of these. The loft and lie machine will be sitting there. The client will be hitting balls. We'll be looking at his ball flight. We'll be making a tweak, giving it back to him, letting him hit it again until we get the ball flight that we're looking for and the contact that we're looking for. And once again, this is an investment, but this is the best way and the only way that's truly 100% perfect. That doesn't involve reading things. It involves ball flight, and ball flight is what it's all about. Now, this is the one that's the most important point about lie angles. The only reason, and I'll say it again, the only reason you would ever make a lie angle change is to enhance or correct a desired ball flight. There is no reason to make a lie change if you have a ball flight that you like. No matter how many readings you would get off a board or off a marker or what your friends are saying or what it looks like at a dress position, if you have the ball flight you want, you don't change things. Okay? So the only reason to change the lie angle is to enhance a ball flight, not to end up with a reading from a board or a sticker. Okay? Now, the reason for that is let's say that you're hitting a ball and it's a pull, and you do a lie test and it shows that you're 4 degrees flat on your lie test. Well, the correction for that would be to bring it upright, but we've already discussed that an upright club is going to pull a ball. You already had a pull. So now you've got a double pull, but you have a perfectly good reading on your lie angle. So we can see that, the ends justify the means. Don't get caught up in trying to achieve specific specs or readings. It's all about the ball flight, and everything that we do in fitting is about a ball flight. It's not about trying to get standard tests completed. Any questions on lie angle? Any curiosities?
I have one question for you, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long would a lie angle change last? Is there such thing as metal memory?
Forged clubs can move, especially if somebody's practicing a lot and practicing on a mat. You could see those move. Somebody who's interested in always being good, having their equipment good, would get those checked every year. Cast clubs, most of the clubs on the market, they're really difficult. I've got to put all my 225-pound weight on those sometimes to bend them, so the chance of those bending through play is almost negligible. But, you go to an older forged club or a newer forged club, really soft metal, they can move a degree, probably degree and a half over time.
Great. Thank you.
I've actually got a question, Paul, if you don't mind.
Sure.
It might actually be a broader question when you cover more of this, but it is related to lie angles as well. So I'll let you make the call.
Okay.
But as instructors, when we're trying to help our learners work on their ball flight, we're assessing some of their hooks, some of their slices, these kind of things. At what point do we kind of set aside a lot of the drills and things and say, this could be an equipment issue? What light bulb goes off to say, you should really see a fitter because this is something that we can't fix with your swing?
Well, that's a good question, because that's exactly the point of this drill tonight. When you feel that they're making swings and they have their face contact and you think that they're doing what they're supposed to do, but you don't see a result, then I would start looking at equipment. with lie angles, the immediate start line of a ball will usually be affected with a lie angle. So they tend to just come out of the gate, heading diagonal. And if you're standing back and you're in tune with this student and, you know their swing and you think, they're not coming over the top. I don't see a big closed club face here. We should not see a straight pull to the left or vice versa to the right, then that's when I would really start to look at it. That's when maybe you can introduce a couple of these tests. And while I've covered that they're not perfect, they still may give you some insight into what's happening. But if I didn't see the changes that the student made with his swing, or I saw a good swing that wasn't producing results, then I would start to question the equipment.
That's great. So do you find it an advantage being a master club fitter as well? Are you able to identify a little bit quicker whether this is a swing issue or an equipment issue? Like, is that a real benefit you find to you to be able to identify those issues quicker?
Oh, without a doubt. I can
Nice.
usually do this. Now, I'm doing this a long time now. For me, it's usually a couple of swings, and I'll say, I have lots of people that come for fittings, and after 2 or 3 swings, I'll say, I'd really like to sell you a set of clubs, but we've got some issues here that I think that we can deal with your swing first. And with other people, it'll be the opposite. They'll come in for a lesson, and I'll go, nobody could play those clubs you have. So, we need to kind of do a couple of things here first.
Excellent. Thank you.
I know that's a bit of a broad answer, but yes, being versed in both, it makes you better in each of them. I'm a much better teacher for understanding equipment, and I'm much better at fitting people from teaching.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. All right. We'll move on. Oh, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. For the last point you had with everybody, you talk about, like, let's say, example, for myself, I have 1.5 degree up, and my ball go right for, let's say, a push, like you said, but I have a swing inside out.
Yeah.
So how I should correct my lie angle on my club?
Well, you have to first, I would first determine whether your push is caused by you just having an open club face, or whether it is a mechanical issue of you making a good swing and good club face, but the lie angle being wrong. So the first thing is, you have to go through and make sure that the person's just not leaving their club face open and then blaming that on a lie angle. So if you feel that you've got it through, and this is where data comes in so good, a push on a lie angle problem will still show up as a good club face if it was a good club face.
So they're related together, lie angle and club face. Huh?
Well, absolutely. No lie angle in the world will offset an open club face. Okay?
Yeah.
So, we still have to get those things working. It's just that when a lie angle is bad, a square club face can be an issue.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll answer anything in depth through an email or through a phone call at the end of this, but or on another day. But we'll chug on through. Okay.
You should at least acknowledge that. Well,
swing weight. So this is one that's really interesting to me because as I do a lot of repairs and I do a lot of alterations and I do a lot of shaft change outs for people who buy clubs and change out the shafts in their irons. This one really gets to fine tune a lot. The swing weight is basically a measurement system of the relationship of the balance between the grip end and the head weight of a club. So it's it's basically a reference point so that people can understand how it balances. Now, swing weight is made up out of an alphanumeric system to indicate balance. We have A0 to A9, B0 to B9, and so on all the way up. Every time you go up in a letter, say from A to B, the head weight appears to get heavier. Okay, it'll feel heavier. And every time you go up in a number, it gets heavier. So, an A9 will be lighter than a B9, and a B9 will be lighter than a C2, and so on and so on. This is the feeling of how the club balances, more head weight. So if I have a C9 hit swing weight, the head would feel lighter than a club with a swing weight of D2. And if I have a D4 swing weight, the head would feel heavier than a club with a swing weight of D2. Now, D2, D3, D1 are pretty well industry standards. Most clubs are going to come with that. That's kind of a nice complement for swing weight. So let's look at what happens if we have students and they're outside the norms a little bit. So to understand swing weight, you have to understand how the swing weight scale works and why we would have discrepancies in weights and sometimes. So your club goes in the grip end goes under that little notch on the left-hand side, and then your club goes down and it sits in the cradle on the right-hand side. Now, from the grip end to the fulcrum, there where the bracket is 14 inches. So that means that on every club that you have, more of the club is hanging off to the right than to the left. So you imagine a kid's seesaw or teeter-totter. If one end is short and one end is long, then you need much more weight on the other end in order to get a balance. So this is what we're doing. And then this black sliding thing on the rail, this slides up and down until we balance, and then it gives us a reading of scale. And understanding that that 14-inch fulcrum is there and it's not in the middle is how we actually make the swing weight work. So this is now where we get into being able to help your student. You get a student that's tall or short and they want their clubs cut down, or they have got them cut down, and they come to you and they're swinging and they're just saying, something's just not feeling right here. I'm just not able to really kind of feel what my clubs did. They used to feel okay, now they don't. When we add length to a club, we add swing weight. So obviously, if you make something longer, it's going to feel heavier. And because we have that 14-inch balance fulcrum, if I add length, then the long end got heavier again. So in order to, for every half inch of club length that I increase, my swing weight would go up 3 points. So if I take a standard club and I increase the length by half an inch, it would go from, say, a D2 to a D5. Now, if that student has those clubs lengthened and he says, but I want to retain my original swing weight, then we basically need to add weight to the grip end to balance that back up, because we've made that long end heavier. So I need to put weight on the grip end to bring it back to where it was. And when I'm doing that, I need to add 5 grams of weight to make up 1 swing weight point. So if I added a half an inch to an iron that was originally D2, it now require 15 grams of weight in the grip end to get it back to that original D2. Okay, so I've gone from a D2 to a D5. I want to bring it back to D2. I have to add 15 grams of weight in. Now, if you get someone who came in there and they said that I want to go an inch longer, well, then all of a sudden, their club is going to feel really heavy, and you can balance it out by putting weight back in the grip, but you'd have to put 30 grams in. We'll get into this later on whether this is feasible or not. So when you add length, your swing weight will go up. Okay, when you reduce your length, your swing weight goes down. So we see a lot of times in this is that someone buys a nice set of clubs, then they come back in 4 or 5 months and they say, I should have got them fit for me. I'm only 5'3", 5'4". Can you cut them down an inch for me? And there's lots of people out there will gladly cut them down. And then all of a sudden the swing weight drops and the person doesn't feel the head because it's floating and there's not enough weight there. It doesn't feel like a club is supposed to feel. So when we reduce, swing weight goes down. And if I reduce it a half inch in length, I'm going to lose 3 swing weight points. So for instance, I would go from a D2 down to a D9. Be D2, D1, D0, C9. We go down 3 points. Now to increase that swing weight, I need to add weight to the head to get it back up. Now this is where the difference comes in between whether I lengthen or shorten. We talk about that 14-inch length fulcrum. Well, I'm shortening it. So what balanced before, that long end is now getting shorter. So now I need to add weight to it to bring it back up. But because it's the long end and most of the balance is on the side of it, then I don't need the 5 grams that I needed to balance out the grip side. I only need 2 grams. So if I shorten a club by half an inch, then for every swing weight point, which is 3, I'd have to add 2 grams. So I would have to add 6 grams of tip weight to bring that back up so that it felt like it did when it started. So this is where we get a difference. If I lengthen the club, I needed to add 5 grams per swing weight. And if I shorten it, I add 2 grams per swing weight. And this is usually done a couple of different ways. If it's a quick fix and you're kind of beginning at it, most people will put a weight down the shaft and jam it in with some glue, and it'll be down by the head. Realistically, you pull the head off, you put a tip weight in from the bottom of the shaft, then you balance everything and you glue it back together again. So it's quite a bit of work when you're doing it. And you've got to spend a lot of time factoring in grip weight and all sorts of stuff so it balances. But the main thing you need to know is that if someone comes in and their clubs are excessively short or long all of a sudden, and they're saying that they just have issues feeling it, well, it's usually an issue that they were changed and the swing weight wasn't corrected. Then we get into total weight of the club. And this is where we get into, when do we actually stop paying attention to swing weight and start paying attention to overall weight? Because you can get caught up with swing weight and we still have a club that we have to swing, and overall weight is very important. And trying to set standard swing weight goals for an unusually long or unusually short clubs isn't always advisable, and it may even make them unplayable. So let's look at a couple of scenarios. So here's an example. I'll take Callaway Paradigm 7 iron, last year's Paradigm. Stock right out of the box, off the shelf. They're 37 inches long. They have a D1 swing weight. And if I put them on a digital scale, they weigh 402 grams. I play the Callaway Paradigm. I'm 6'5". I play 1.5 inches over length because my back is a little bit of an issue also. And, I'm tall to begin with. And then I add that in. I've gone to a 38.5-inch length club, which is 1.5 inches over length. Now, we discussed earlier that for every 1/2 inch, you get 3 swing weight points. I'm 1.5 inches. Mine actually went up 8 swing weight points to a D9. Now, if you've ever picked up a club that's D9, it feels like a sledgehammer. Okay? It is a really, really heavy club. It's unplayable for most people. People pick up my club, my friends pick up my club, and they go, holy God, how can you swing that? And I'll say, well, you're 5'6" and 140 pounds, and I'm 6'5", 225 pounds. So there's a little bit of a difference, and I've gotten used to it. Now, here's what happens is that extra length club, that 1.5 inch length club, 1.5 inch extra length, that when I put it on scale weighs 422 grams. So it's 20 grams heavier than the stock model already. Now, 20 grams, imagine that you go from a 60-gram driver shaft to an 80-gram driver shaft. What that feels. You feel that instantly. That's significant. Now, here's where we get into where we can't continue to chase swing weight, where sometimes we have to ignore it. So I have a D9 club. If I wanted to swing weight mine back to D1, back to the factory specs, so that it feels and balances like a factory club, I would need to reduce that by 8 swing weight points. Now, because I am a longer club and I want to reduce swing weight, I have to add it to the grip end. And we already talked that for every swing weight point I want to bring down from a long club, I have to add 5 grams to the grip. So I would have to add 5 grams for each of those 8 swing weight points. That's 40 grams of weight. I add that to the 20 grams of weight that my club is already heavier due to the length. That makes it 60 grams heavier than the stock market, than the stock club, just to bring it back to a factory reading of D1. 60 grams heavier would be unplayable. That's 2 driver shafts in your driver instead of 1. So I technically have a D1 swing weight, but I have a club that is unplayable. And this is where you stop chasing swing weight and you say, you know what, I'm just not going to pay attention to it. I have to deal with the lightness of the club. I can't add weight to get a light reading, right? Just think of how that sounds. I'm adding weight to make the scale read that it's lighter. There's no scenario in the world where that works. So you can actually balance a telephone pole to make it read D1 because it is just a reference of how the balance is. You can balance anything to make it D1. That doesn't mean you should. This goes back to the old joke, just because they make clothes in your size doesn't mean you should wear them. So D1, you can make anything you want. I had a little argument with somebody online a little while ago in a club making forum, and they were talking about their customers' clubs being lengthened and that the customer didn't want the swing weight changed. And the guy was arguing that, well, if he doesn't have a D1 or a D2, he's not going to be able to play. It's more important to get the swing weight. And I tried to explain this to him, and he wouldn't. So I put together a little experiment and sent it to him. There's D1 swing weight. That's a 3-pound ankle weight on the head, a gallon of paint, a tub of plumber's putty, and a pint of stain and a screwdriver on the other end. That's 11 and a half extra pounds on that club, but it is a D1 swing weight. That's a factory D1 swing weight right there. Try and play that. That's a 12 and a half pound club. That's like a mall. So you can't chase swing weight all the time. Sometimes you have to ignore it, but in small circumstances, when somebody's making small changes to their club, or if they say, you know what, my club feels good, but the head is just I just don't quite feel it. You can always put a little bit of lead tape on their club and experiment. Does it feel better now? If they say, oh, that's much better, then you go back in and you start doing the swing weighting properly. You put the weights in so that they don't leave, a nice expensive club full of lead tape on the back. There's different ways to do things. You could put weight in a grip somewhere if they feel that it's too heavy. Weight on the grip will help balance it out, make the head feel lighter. You do these things to experiment so that the client can hit balls and then say, yeah, that feels better. Now I think it's worth us doing this. A lot of rambling there. Any questions?
Paul, I got a question.
Yeah.
So for you, do you use a lighter than average shaft in those irons?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, if I play a Elevate 95. If I played, say, a Dynamic Gold, which was 130, that'd probably swing weight somewhere up around E3. And then it'd just be too much for me. I wouldn't be able to play it. And I would love to have my club lighter than it is, Mark, but you know what? That's just the way it's going to be from here on in. I could try graphite, but I've tried graphite and I just don't like the feel of it yet. So you can't have heavier, you can't have longer without having heavier. It's just physics.
Yeah, I'm 6'4" and I have the recoil 95 shafts.
Yeah.
And my clubs aren't quite as long as yours. Mine are only half-inch over length.
Yeah, and at a half-inch, I could put the extra weight in the grip, and I could get my swing weight back because I'm still kind of in a small tolerance somewhere. But at 1.5 inches, there's just too much to do.
Paul, is it reasonable to look at the aspect of going to a graphite shaft?
Oh, absolutely. You have to just keep in mind how much weight you're saving, though. If you're going to go to, say, if you're at a 105 gram shaft and you're going to go to a 95 gram shaft, well, yeah, you'll save 10 grams, but on a long extension or a really short club, that's still not going to kind of get you anywhere where you want to be as far as standard. But yes, you can certainly make some savings there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Paul, Dennis, you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Just a question. When I build some clubs, and often I build it with wind dry tack at 50 gram grips.
Mm-hmm.
I know they wore out faster than the regular grips because of the lightweight of the grips.
Yes.
Some customer will be back and ask for the CP2 wrap jumbo 80 gram grips.
Mm-hmm.
So they lose a lot of feeling with it, but they have the right size of the grip. What is your experience behind MOI that doesn't change much, but swing weight is going to change a lot?
Swing weight is going to change a lot. So if you went from 50 to 80, that's 30. That's 30, and going 5 grams, that's 6 swing weight points on the club. So that's lowering your swing weight point by 6. That would be a big difference if you were kind of D1, D2, and you brought down into mid C's. that would kind of be like a senior ladies club. You know, ladies clubs are always much lighter swing weight because they usually tend to need that extra lightness in the head. As far as MOI, you know, there's always a trade-off, and this is why I said at the beginning, there's generalizations and then there's specifics. If a person feels better with a large grip, that may outweigh anything that has to do with balance or MOI. You know, if they're feeling better with something in their hands that way, that may override everything. Greg Wells, who's on here somewhere, Greg just did a video on this a day or so ago, changing his grip size. And he seems to be a huge fan of it instantly. He had some responses. He can talk about that later on. But this is why when you make changes, you're not always going to get exactly what the theory says you're going to get. This is why, you know, you sometimes have to experiment and think, I'm going to change one, but, you know, I may not get what I want. I know it's a roundabout answer, but if somebody wants a grip and they feel much better with that club in their hand, they will usually tend to play better. You know, it's the grip is so important. If it's in your fingers and makes the club feel good, you can kind of get used to some things. Do you want to add, do you want to add 30 grams of weight to a grip to once again trick a scale into a reading? You know, at the small amounts, you can do that. But when you start moving into big amounts, it just doesn't make sense in my experience.
Yeah, that's what I figured out too. But I had a customer last week that changed those grips, and I was like advertising not to expect too much, but he liked better heavy grip than the regular 50-gram grip.
Absolutely. You know, for anybody on this that plays hockey, you break your stick, you go to the bench and grab someone else's stick, and their tape job on the butt is different. You're completely lost. That's how important it is. You know, you've only got one hand on the butt of the stick, and you're lost if someone's got a different tape knob on the back of it. Same with grips, you know. So in all of these things we're doing, there will be the player's preference and the player's delivery will override just about everything. We can try and help them as much as they can, but you know what they do is going to have a bigger impact.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
I do some fitting. It takes 1 hour, 2 hours, and then sometimes I add 2 gram and 3 gram of weight on the head to have a center impact. And just the case we just discussed, 30 gram, and it changed all the fitting we did like 6 months ago, because we were trying to adjust with 1, 2, or 3 grams, and now 30 gram, and they play better with it. So that's a little bit of a
Sometimes you can go way out in left field and do the things that should provide horrible results, and they end up working. This is why it's always a work in progress, and sometimes it's an experimentation, and your experience kind of takes you and lets you go that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, Paul, I just wanted to mention that I imagine it can be really difficult because people will come in for a fitting, and by the end of the hour, they want to have, you know, their numbers dialed in, what's best for them. And if you're experienced with this, been doing it a long time, you can do that. But there must be an element of, you've got to try this for a while. It's just like doing drills with a lesson. You got to try it and let it build in. I know when I tried graphite shafts for the first time, you're mentioning weights, they're 35 grams lighter. I'm not sure what the swing weight is in measurement, but immediately I was casting the club with my unique swing, and I could have easily just given up and said, no, they're not for me. But as I started to work on them, they helped develop my swing. They start to feel a little bit more comfortable. How do you balance that? This is going to work for you, but give it some time, with the impatient kind of customer that wants to walk out with a tailored suit of golf clubs?
That's a really good question, and sometimes there is no answer, Greg. Other times, if it's, say, somebody wants a higher swing weight point, you know, what I can do is, like I mentioned before, you know, we can doctor that up with some lead tape or something. Say, look, I'm going to doctor your clubs up this way, and I want you to just leave it on and play 4 or 5 games, hit some balls, and then if that's not working, we'll just peel the tape off. If it is working, then you know, we'll go in and we'll take your clubs apart and we'll give you the weighting the way that it should be. if it's something that's a little bit more permanent, someone's just ordering a set of clubs and they say, I want this. Well, there has to be some kind of trust and go back and forth with people. And there's lots of times where I'll do a fitting with someone. And, I had one yesterday where I had a fitting with someone and they said, everything's perfect, but I just don't like the size of that grip. And, I could easily have said, well, yeah, well, just imagine it with a bigger grip on it. Let's try another club. But what I did was I said, look, come back today. Give me 10 minutes. I'll go home. I'll change that grip and come back, later on today. And let's get it in your hands with the way it is. So sometimes you just got to kind of put ones and twos, or I'll say, let me give you a club set up the way that I think it will be. And I'll give you, let's do your 7-iron. That's the worst case scenarios. We undo it then at the end. So, they may have to do that. They may just have a club in their bag that they're playing on with that way.
I imagine the experience is a real benefit there because it's different there's no magic formula, right? Everybody's swing is completely different in this sort of genre of club fitting. Is that what you find?
Absolutely. Experience helps a lot, and being a teacher helps a lot. And then, asking your clients to put some trust in you and say, look, if it's not working right, then we'll do something else. If it was so easy as just saying, if I do this, everything is great, but sometimes it's a process.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Yep. All right, I'm going to move on, folks, because there's a lot of stuff to cover, but I love the questions.
One more.
Sure.
So every overwrap under the grip is also given weight. How much is the weight for one overwrap?
Insignificant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But
for one extra wrap, it's a piece of it's a piece of tape. It's insignificant, really. One piece of wrap. Yeah,
so you go 6, let's say.
Well, if you go 6, then for basically, for every 5 grams that I'm adding to the grip, I would add, I would have a swing weight point. So basically, you would kind of peel off all your tape that you're going to put on, throw it on a digital scale, see what that weighs, and then you're going to know what your swing weight will be when you put it on.
Okay. And the last question is regarding your experience through all the customer you went through regarding the swing weight and the weight. Is there a recipe that's D1 is most popular for everyone, or D9, or?
Well, D1 is an industry standard. D1 or D2, D3 for the last, since swing weighting came out, that's pretty well the standard. If you look up any factory specs, you're going to see probably D2 more than anything else. That's kind of a standard.
But when they left you after fitting?
Well, I will recommend to them what I think is best. And if they say, I want this to be D1, and like I said, if I showed the example of mine, which would require 60 grams, I just won't do it.
Okay.
So I'll only do what I think is right, because that's going to go out there with my name on it, and someone else is going to pick it up and go, you must have been mad to go to this guy. So, if somebody insists on something that I don't believe in, I'll say I'm not the person for it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Hey, Paul, I've got a very quick question for you, if possible.
All right.
It's Glenn here. I'm just trying to use an example here. So I used the Stealth 2 driver with the Ventus Black 6X shaft.
Okay.
And I'm hitting 280, 290, hitting about 75% of the fairways with this. Everything is great. And I'm considering increasing the head weight by about 10, 15 grams. And I'm wondering if that's going to throw off dispersion or potentially add an extra 10 yards or so.
I doubt very much if you'll add 10 yards. Every design driver out there is designing the heads to be lighter and lighter and lighter. Adding weight, while it's a physics equation that more weight would hit it farther, it's very unlikely that you actually end up getting more speed.
Okay.
So you would probably lose
stock
speed
at D4, D5.
Yeah. So you add 10 grams to that. That's 5 swing weight points on the head end. That's going up quite a bit.
So it's more than likely
I
going to
think
throw off the
I
swing.
think that you would throw off everything.
Gotcha.
That's my gut
Appreciate it.
feeling. All
Thank
right,
you very much.
set makeup. Now, here is where we can, as instructors, help our students without any knowledge of club fitting at all, by being able to kind of look at how they've got their bag set up, do a couple of quick assessments. Even if you have no technical knowledge, this next part can help you really fine-tune players. So every club in a person's bag should be a good club. And I don't mean quality, I mean that it should be a club that works for them. And over all these decades of me doing this, one thing is absolutely consistent, is that most mid to high golfers, most mid to high handicap golfers have a minimum of 2 or 3 clubs in their bag that do the exact same thing, or they avoid at all cost. How many people do you know carry a club that they haven't hit once this year? You know, I've got friends, we all do, right? So they have at least 2 to 3 and sometimes no more. So I'm going to give you some ways you can help streamline their bag so that there are no bad clubs in their bag. There's bad swings all the time, but we want to get rid of that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to record ball speed and carry distance averages with each club in a player's bag. And then we're going to look for overlaps or gaps. Now, here is the most important part of this. And I know very few people who do it this way. When you're collecting ball speed and carry distance averages with each club, you don't do it. Sorry, let me start again. When we're doing it, we need to do it in a way that we play golf. So we don't play golf by going to the driving range and hitting 10 7-irons, and then 10 8-irons, and then 10 9-irons, and 10 5-irons, and so on and so on and so on, getting our averages. We don't play golf like that. So it's very unlikely that the numbers will match when we're only hitting one and then hitting another club. So what I do when I'm recording people is they hit a driver, then they hit an 8-iron, then they hit a 4 hybrid, hit a sand wedge, and I will get one number for each club, and then we'll repeat it in another random order and another random order until I have 5 or 6 or 7 shots with each club in completely random orders, because that's how we play golf. Those averages are wildly different than when you hit 5 and 6 and 7 in a row of the same club. You wouldn't think they would be, but we know they are, because people get in a groove with a club and their averages go up. And then they go out on the course and they go, well, I was averaging 160. I'm only averaging 152 now. Yeah, because you worked yourself into a consistent pace with those clubs. So you plot out, make a table, get everybody's averages with ball speed and carry distance. Carry distance, not rollout. Okay. Now, when we have all that data, we're going to look at the gapping of their clubs. All of the major companies, Titleist, TaylorMade, Callaway, Ping, Cobra, all of them, they all gap, and they talk about ball speed versus distance. They gap everything by a 5-mile-an-hour ball speed with their irons. So for every time you get a longer iron, you should gain 5 miles an hour, and a shorter iron, you should lose 5 miles an hour. So, we have a 7-iron, hypothetically goes 100 miles an hour ball speed. If I go to a 6, I should get 105. If I go to a 5, I should get 110. Now, that 5-mile-an-hour ball speed difference is for irons. Soon as I leave the irons and go to my next lowest club, such as a hybrid or a fairway wood, they should be gapped by 10 mile an hour. So I should have a 10-mile-an-hour gap from irons to hybrids or woods. And then that 10 continues throughout the rest of the hybrids, from hybrid to hybrid, or from hybrid to fairway, or fairway to fairway, fairway to driver. So we're 5 miles an hour throughout irons and 10 for all the other clubs. When you do that, you get the distance of how those clubs were designed. But we need to do it previous, as we talked about, in getting them to hit random selections so that they get it. If you do that and then do this, you're way off to the races with helping a student. Once you have all those gappings and you have everything done, we go over it with the student. We look at it. How many overlaps do we have? If you have older people, or especially ladies, or especially high handicap golfers, I can guarantee that below the 6-iron, you've got at least 3 to 4 clubs that are not within that are not spaced out any more than 8 or 10 yards. 5 iron goes the same distance. 4 iron goes the same distance. 3 hybrid goes the same distance. They all start losing efficiency. They lose ball speed because they get into lower clubs. So if there are overlaps in distance and ball speed, we ask the student, okay, we got 3 clubs here. Which one do you hit the best? If they say this, then the other 2 come out of the bag. And if they argue with you, say, well, let's just look at it. These are problems. These are temptations. These are evil clubs. They're sitting there tempting you to hit them when the data shows that they don't do anything different than the one that you can hit good. Then we're going to look at the other side. We've got gaps to fill. What happens if we have a large gap somewhere? Well, the first thing that I'll always do is I'll give the student the benefit of the doubt first. I'll say, are you aware that there's a gap here? Maybe there's 20 yards between, say, an 8 iron and a 9 iron, or a 9 iron and a wedge. And they'll say, oh, yeah, I'm aware of that. So if so, can you explain to me how you deal with it? And lots of people will give me a sensible answer. I have a pitching wedge. It's 44 degrees. Then I don't have anything to a sandwich, 56. I got a huge gap in there. I'll say, well, you've got a big gap. We looked at your ball speed. There's a lot of space there. Yeah, I know, but you know what? I don't like hitting hard wedges or full length wedges. So I take stuff off my pitching wedge. They've given me what they do. And I'll say, are you happy with that? Is that working for you? Yes, I'm happy with that. Okay, well, then we leave it alone. They found a solution themselves. If they don't have a solution, then I talk to them about a solution. Maybe it's tweaking the lofts through a loft and lie machine. Maybe it's adding an additional club. Maybe it's looking at clubs that are designed to actually help them out a little bit. Now, here is where I get into off the rails a little bit. Wedges. Wedges should be purchased only to hit specific distances or to perform specific tasks. However, most golfers buy the wedge based on the required loft and not the required distance. So by that, I mean they have a 48-degree pitching wedge. So they say, okay, I need a 52 right after that, and then I need a 56. So they're buying based on the required loft, but they don't know the distance that those clubs are going to go. And there is a discrepancy in a lot of things, which brings us to the next part. I'm going to talk about 2 different categories of wedges and why this becomes an issue, and that very few people ever talk about this. I found this out myself, and I'm sure that other people found it out decades before me, but I never ever saw it online anywhere. I'm going to talk about iron set wedges, and then specialty wedges. So an iron set wedge for this conversation will be a wedge outside of your pitching wedge that comes with your set, or that you can buy with your set. So let's say, my Callaway Paradigms, they come with a pitching wedge, then they also have an available A wedge and a G wedge and even a sand wedge with the set. Most sets, if you look at them, they have that kind of makeup. And then a specialty wedge, we're going to just say, for ease of understanding, it's going to be like a Vokey wedge. And they come in lofts, 52s, 56, 60s, so on and so on. So we have iron style wedges, and then we have specialty wedges. However, the difference in technology between the irons and the specialty wedges is immense. Irons, the technology has grown in leaps and bounds. We've got perimeter weighting, tungsten weighting. We've got oversized heads. We've got face construction with spring weight, with foam filled, with all sorts of stuff. And then we go to a blade wedge, like a Vokey wedge. And what is the technology improvement in that in the last 40 years? Grooves, spin control. The whole technology in those is wrapped up in grooves and the bounce and the grind. Technically, they are the same design they were 75 years ago. They are a blade. They have no spring face. They have no cavity back. They have no perimeter weighting. They have no tungsten weighting. So if I have a specialty wedge that's 48 degrees and I have a wedge from my set that's 48 degrees, would I expect them to go the same distance? Anybody? I wouldn't.
Nope.
I wouldn't go expect them. If I have a brand new, a brand new, say, ping, whatever, right? Brand new 7-iron, and I have an exact same similar loft in a tiny Tor blade, would I expect those to go the same distance? Absolutely not. Now, also, because we have that technology difference, on mishits and on distance, I don't get the same performance. So I would not get the same performance out of a 48-degree pitching wedge style iron as I would out of a 48-degree Vokey. So because of this, we end up with irregular lofts if we're going to gap them. And this is where gapping by distance and not by loft comes into play. So I have a pitching wedge from my set. It's 48 degrees. Then I add a 52-degree wedge from a Vokey or Callaway or whatever. And then I lose performance based on the technology. I lose tremendous performance if I start mishitting it. Now my gap is pulled away. I've got a huge gap between those two clubs because I left technology behind. So the way that I do it with my students and clients is I gap that first specialty wedge based on distance from their last wedge in their iron set. So we may have a 44-degree pitching wedge and we may have a 45-degree specialty wedge, but I'm gapping it based on the distance that it gave me, not on the loft. And then once I get that first specialty wedge gapped, because that technology stays the same to the next wedges, then I can go back to my 4 and 5-degree gapping. But the first one, I have to find out what the distance is with that performance loss. And there is a performance loss there. Nobody can argue with it because the technology is completely different. So that's where irregular lofts come in. And when I do this with people first, and they say, well, that makes no sense. I've already got that one in my bag. No, you don't, because we'll show you that you're not hitting it the same. And without this, everybody has a tremendous gap between their last wedge and their first specialty wedge. And I see it about 95% of the time. And the higher the handicap, the bigger that gap gets. Any questions on that, on setup or wedges?
I think that's a great point on the wedges there, Paul. I think all too often people, especially the non-informed, like our golf students, are, sold to get the sexy wedges, right?
Absolutely.
And they give up on the technology because of, the tour players play Vokeys or they play this or they play that. So they get sort of sucked into that false sense of knowing what's right and what's wrong. So we have to be, informed to inform them, right? Just as you said, as we're educating and we're providing knowledge to our students, so that they understand what it is that they need to play better with. So that's fantastic. I really like what you're saying.
And Jeff, this becomes more of an issue with the younger golfers. The 20-year-olds, the 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds who are more, they're more social media driven. They're more trend driven. They want the shiny apple in the bag.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Paul, has modern lofts kind of thrown a kink in it to try to convey this information to your customers? When you have pitching wedges that are coming out 41 degrees, 42 degrees, and then traditional gap wedge might be 52 degrees, and you've got 10 degrees of loft difference there. I know it comes down to how far you hit, but do you have a hard time convincing them, like, you might need a couple of gap wedges, or when do you start just talking degrees, like a 52 wedge instead of an approach or something?
Well,
the first one you just said that.
That's exactly where we go back, and I don't talk about lofts. I talk about the distance. I'm saying, okay, you're at 128 yards, and then we go down to 96 yards. So we need something in here. So let's find a club that gives us that yardage. And they'll say, well, what loft is it? I say, well, how am I supposed to know yet? We got to find this out. We got to hit some shots and find out. And and don't feel foolish if you've got a 46-degree gap wedge and a 48-degree next wedge. Like, don't feel silly about that because it's put in your bag of distances. But yes, it has become an issue with wedges, and that it requires more wedges in your bag with the stronger lofts. But also on the other end, people are not tending to buy the lower clubs. They're, the bottom of their bag. They're not taking the 3s, 4s, and even sometimes 5s on those sets. So you're really just kind of scaling and moving the scale. So you still end up with the same amount of clubs because of the lofts.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Does that help a little bit?
Yeah,
Excellent
a
job.
lot.
It's all based on data. Everything I do is based on data, and if the data doesn't make sense, then we don't do things. So, okay.
This is all very, very interesting because it plays a big part. And if we're trying to help our students through swing changes or whatever it might be, it's important to know that this is a significant influence on golf improvement.
Absolutely. Once you can plot something out for somebody and show them that, we're better this way, you're better this way. Only a fool would say, no, I want to go back the other way. Not saying they aren't out there.
Paul, the biggest thing I find, especially with the wedges, is that people love the distance of the set wedges that come with a set. But they don't like the finesse of the standard wedges, and then that makes it difficult because it's all about that distance thing, right?
Right. So this is why what I'll do is I'll try and get the student to explain to me what they consider to be a distance wedge and what they consider to be a finesse wedge. So if my student is out, he's standing at 120. To me, that's a distance. If he's at 45 or 50, that's a finesse. So I'll try and get them to understand that if you're swinging and you're still out the fairway somewhere, then we're better off probably having a wedge that you can hit and have some forgiveness and some flexibility in it, versus you having to stand on top of a 52-degree wedge and muscle it all the way in there. Now, once we get inside around the greens and we get inside certain areas, then yes, now you're becoming finesse, and those other wedges do seem plunky and chunky, but we're not hitting them from that distance. So I kind of like, I like to tell people that if you still think that you're hitting for distance, stay with wedges for as long as you can from your set. Once we get into different things, then we start adding them in. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Total sense. So it boils down to that old golfer's joke. Is it the loft or is it their loft?
Well, exactly. How many times
Lack of
yeah.
talent.
Well, Jeff, so many times someone will ask me, especially the young people, how far do you hit your 60 wedge? I'll say, well, it depends on how far it needs to go.
Exactly.
It might be 12 yards.
Yeah.
All right. Driver
awesome.
settings.
Great job.
Thank you. Driver settings. We all have the drivers with the adaptable sleeves on them. Most people know what they mean. A lot of people don't know all the intricacies of them and what happens when we do make a change. So I want to go over this because this can help your student once again, and you don't need any technical experience. You basically can go from charts. You don't need any equipment, but understanding and looking at someone's sleeve of their loft and lie adjuster can it can help correct some things that may not be apparent. So I'm going to use this chart, which is on TaylorMade's website. It's a TaylorMade adapter. It's off their sim, and we've got standard and higher and lower and upright. Right now, it's a 10.5-degree driver. The red circle is the settings of when that is set in standard. Square face, it has the stated loft, so it's set to 10.5. The lie angle is 56 degrees. This is your stock standard driver right off the shelf in the standard loft. Now, when the loft is lowered, the club face opens also. which may not be a good option for somebody fighting a slice or a high ball flight due to an open club face. And we know as teachers, nothing produces height more than an open club face. Not descent of attack, not anything. Open club face pushes the ball higher than anything else. So somebody is fighting a slice and they have a big high ball flight. What is the first thing that person's going to do if they have an adjustable adapter? They're going to turn it down. When they turn it down, they open the club face. Ball goes higher because whatever loft gain they got by turning it down was offset by the open club face, which has more of an impact than turning the loft down. So this is one that you see all the time. People turning things down to bring something down when in reality it makes it worse. And then they get all frustrated. So let's have a look what happens. I've got a 10.5 degree driver. We now look at that red circle on the left. I've turned the sleeve down to lower. 4 degrees open club face. Now, for people that hit balls and have launch monitors and simulators, you know what 4 degrees does to your club when it's open. 4 degrees is a ball that now leaves the fairway. If you're swinging at 4 degrees open, you've got some issues. It's going to be a big ball flight. So this person was fighting a slice, fighting a high ball flight. They turned their loft down 2 degrees. Face is now 8.5, but the face angle opened up 4 degrees. That is unlikely to bring that ball flight down or correct that slice. Not even a chance. The lie angle goes up a little bit, which will kind of offset a little bit, but nothing corrects a 4 degree open club face. When the loft is increased, club face gets closed. So this may be a good option for someone who is fighting a slice or has a really high ball flight due to an open club face. So that same person now is heading that big high slice, and you say, give me that driver for a second. I'm going to turn the loft up. And they go, are you crazy? I need it to come down. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, let's have a look here. I turn it up 2 degrees. It closes 4 degrees. Now, what's going to make a bigger impact on the height of that shot? A 4 degrees closed club face or a lofted increased 2? We all know the answer to that. 4 degrees closed club face is going to lower anything if you hit it. Our loft goes down 2 degrees. Our lie angle goes up. We started at 56 degree lie angle. We're now up to 58 because we increased the lie angle also as we turned it up. We go back to our lie angle seminar there on the irons, and we know that when you increase lie angle, turn your toe up, your ball is oriented left with your club face. So I turn my loft up 2 degrees, I get 4 degrees closed and oriented another extra couple of degrees to the left because of the lie angle. So this is a case where a high ball flight can be corrected with additional loft sometimes. Would that make sense to most people?
Yes.
Yeah, but a lot of the golfers out there wouldn't understand this. So they're just turning things down and then wondering why they can't get their ball flight to change. So, you know, this is a really good scenario here of helping people find equipment. Does anybody out there have a golfer that they think has the worst slice in the world that they've ever seen? Every one of us has that golfer. Okay. The biggest correction that you can give someone is to give them a low lofted driver, turn it up as high as you can, add the lie angle up as high as you can, slide the weighting back to the heel as high as you can, and now there is no club in the world that can do more for the slice than that. Now it's up to the golfer. So lots of times if I'm doing a fitting, somebody may fit into a 9 degree driver or a 10 degree driver, but I'll bring them down a couple of degrees in loft and turn it up because I know that they need that help. I would never give somebody a high loft driver and then turn it down if they're fighting a slice. So we can kind of help out with this a little bit, but it's a really good scenario where turning a club up can decrease your flight and turning a club down can increase your flight. Then we get to the last part, which is changing lie angle. You know, if we change our driver setting to upright, then basically we orient the face left, just like you would do with irons, and we can kind of help steer that open club face a little bit because of the orientation. This can also help with someone who's fighting a slice. So what happens to that sleeve? We turn it to upright. we increased the lie angle from 4 degrees, from 56 on the bottom to 60 on the top. 4-degree lie adjustment. If you put your angle of your irons up 4 degrees, you're going to see a completely different ball flight. Same thing with the driver. So we can do these things and orient them. And then as you're changing loft, you're also changing lie angle, and understanding what each notch on the sleeve gives us lets us fine tune. Most people will not do the middle notches inside. They'll just go straight to higher or lower, and they might end up with extremes. Now, here's a couple of red flags. And Jeff, I see this one with the young guys also more than anything, the 25, 30-year-olds who are so brand conscious, so model conscious. They want what the guys on tour have. This is the golfer who uses the tour model driver. I want what Rory uses. I want that triple diamond that John Rahm uses. I want that LS low spin model. What they do not realize, and I hear this from my students when I tell them, I didn't know that, a tour model driver is not a better driver. It is designed to eliminate the left-hand side, which the tour pros hate. The old saying, you can talk to a fade, but a hook won't listen, is dead true. With a tour model driver, that low spin, that triple diamond, they are intentionally fade biased, and they come with a lower than standard lie angle. So the face is oriented right, and it's fade biased weighting. Somebody has that, and they've got a right ball flight, and they buy a tour model driver, they're doomed. You know, they bought something to have what the best golfers got, but they're doomed. They're never going to get this in play. The next one, I'm seeing this more and more as people swap stuff out and buy things off Facebook Market used, is putting adapters in clubs that are the wrong dexterity. There are right and left adapters. If you take a left adapter and put it into a club, it's backwards. So 2 degrees upright is actually 2 degrees flat. 2 degrees open, or sorry, 2 degrees open is 2 degrees closed. So the golfer puts their adapter in, they think, oh, I know what I'm doing. I read Paul's stuff. I know all the intricacies, but it's completely out of whack because they didn't realize that there was a left and a right, or that they bought a left and a right. So you can kind of have a look. TaylorMade will have left hand on theirs. They'll have a little LH. Callaway has a line under the numbers, which indicates left. Ping will have left on there somewhere. But sometimes you have to pull the adapter out of the club because it's written on the inside of it. So if you're seeing something that doesn't make sense and you're thinking, you know what, they shouldn't have that ball flight with that setting, pull it apart and ask them, you know, first of all, did you buy a used shaft? And let's find out if that's an issue. Any questions on drivers? All good?
I think everybody's good.
All right, awesome.
What about the one question for the driver about the kick point? About the kick point, is it?
So that's more of a shaft issue, and I had a long session done on shafts, but this would have run about 3 hours, and I had to cut something. So if Mark feels that this was worthwhile, I'll do a part 2 at another time.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Putter fitting. Obviously, the most important club in our bag. More important than any other 2 clubs put together. If you can't putt, you can't play. And if you can putt really good, you can play just about with anyone. You know, we've had all sorts of, everybody's had days where you scraped it around the course and got in and said, wow, right? Didn't realize I shot that good. And then other days where you hit the ball like the best player in the world and nothing goes in the hole. I'm going to talk about how length influences aim, putter length, the difference between mallets and blades, toe hang versus face balance putters, how hosel styles influence your strike point or your sight line, and do looks matter? And that'll pretty well bring us to the end of today. So stay with me for this one. Your posture setup with putter is more important than your posture setup with any other club. With any other club, you've pretty well got a 40 or 50 yard wide fairway that you can still place it in. We have a 4 1/4 inch hole for putting. So if we're off a little bit on our posture and our start line is off a little bit, we are already outside of something. We have no margin for error with putting. Here's an example of a putter length that is too short. So this is me in my garage here. The white line represents the line that the ball is traveling. That's the roll line. It's traveling to that other ball in the distance that I'm using as a hole. The red line is where my eyes are in relationship to that line. My head is out over the putter because I'm taller. I've bent over. It's a short putter. Now, for me to see from where my eyes are to see the hole, I have to look diagonally. And if I look diagonally, the hole to me appears to the left. And this is proven. This is proven through data and through technology of glasses and mapping people's eyesight. If you're over the ball like that, you're going to be looking back to the target. The other thing is that when your head is way out over the ball like that, your backswing will always be severely outside on your takeaway. And you can try this later on tonight. Position yourself, put your head way out over the ball, try and make a backswing without your putter going outwards. It's almost impossible. Opposite is true when your eyes are on the inside. Once again, white line goes to the ball. That's the roll line. The red line is where my eyes are. And then look at the angle that I have to look to that hole in order to see that hole from that position. I'm going to see this hole at least 8 or 9 inches farther right than it is. This is going to completely change how I putt, how I roll the ball, where I orient my face. And from this angle, my putter will swing to the inside severely. I'm way inside, my putter is out, everything will move. So not only is my vision out of whack, my stroke is out of whack. What happens when we find the right putter? Well, I've got white line going to the ball, yellow line going to the ball, red eyes on those lines. Everything is in line here. Now, these are centered straight over the ball. General putting consensus among most tour pros and most high-end professionals is that you're actually either over the ball or on the inside of the ball or slightly on the inside. But either one of those are pretty well accepted as being the given, best case scenarios. There's no scenario where your eyes are far out or far inside. That just creates vision problems. So we get our eyes over the ball. This is what happens to our aim. So if your student is standing up and they're trying to square their putter and flatten it on the ground, and the only way that they can get that lie angle down flat is to stand it up really tall, which brings them over the hole and over the ball, and we can kind of try something a little bit shorter. Vice versa, they're way down on the toe and they need to get back on it, then they're going to end up backwards farther and the putter's going to play a little bit long. So we kind of try with different lengths here and see what helps them out. Mallets versus blades. Now, there's 2 different distinct designs here. And due to design and weighting technology, mallets provide better alignment help. You've got a broader scope to deal with from front of the face to the back of the putter. There's more alignment issues that you can do there. There's more things that you can do to create sight lines. Because of the weighting and the MOI, the control and impact stability is much better than a blade. So mallets are more forgiving, and this is not an opinion. This is proven. They're easier to line up. They have more control and more impact stability. Blades are less forgiving, but are way more aesthetically pleasing to most people. You send a bunch of people into a golf town or into a boutique store and say, pick out whatever putter you like. I guarantee you they're going to those Scotty Studio Selects. They're grabbing the Tiger putter. They're coming out of there with that. I hear it all the time from my students, right? Can you get me a Scotty? Yeah, but do you know that that's what you need? Yeah, oh yeah, for sure, right? Yeah. No, it doesn't matter. I want the Scotty, right? So we have mallets and blades. There's your standard mallet. Okay, we've got perimeter weighting out to the extremes. The more that you move your weight to the back of a putter, the more stable it becomes. The more you move it to the front, the less stable it becomes. So with a mallet, you can add weight far away from the impact face and give it stability on off-center hits. And you have that sight line. So that's an Odyssey Versa 12. It's a really popular putter. People can line that up really easy. And then there's your standard blade. Okay, no resistance to twisting, very little of it, very small sight lines, but really pretty. Now, putters generally tend to come in either face balanced or some version of toe hang. And toe hang is when you balance the putter across your hand on the shaft, the toe drops down. And that usually drops down anywhere from 20 to 90 degrees. So if you look back at Phil Mickelson when he used to play and he used to have that little Odyssey 9, that little tiny blade that came out, that's a severe 90-degree toe hang. And then most of the mallets that are on tour are face balanced or very close to it. And knowing the putter design and what it does can help you with your golfer, help them identify some problems that they're having a hard time shaking. You know, why are they having these problems over and over again? What makes a putter toe hang and face balanced? Well, it's not the weight in the head, it's how the shaft intersects through the center of gravity. So the one on the left, that's a face balanced putter. If I draw a line down from the shaft, it goes right through the center of gravity before it bends. So the weighting and the center of gravity line up with the axis. It's going to face balance. The next one has got toe hang. Okay, the axis comes down closer to the heel, so the center of gravity is farther on the toe. And then the one on the right is even more toe hang because it's got center of gravity farther away from the axis again. So these are, you know, examples of them. And there's your toe hang putter. Now, when we get into this, we're talking about results again, and I'll do one little disclaimer in a second here. And the greater the toe hang, the more effort it takes to close during the stroke. Think about something that has a lot of weight on the toe. You swing it back. When you swing it back, then momentum starts to go. Now, when you go to swing it back the other way again in your forward stroke, that weight has lag. So you swing back, there's lag. The toe hangs back. It requires effort to close it. So this is suited for someone who usually has a pull as their miss because it slows the club head down. It requires more effort to close it. So it's a little bit slower to get around. So if you're putting and missing to the left, might be a good option to use here. Now, for years and years and years, you heard people say toe hang putters swing around faster, so they're great for people who hit it to the right. That is wrong. There's still people to say that, but it's wrong. You take your driver, it has a sliding weight. You want to stop hitting it to the right, you slide that weight to the heel. You don't add it out on the toe. When you add mass out, you slow things down rotating. So toe hang is better for people who hit it to the left generally. This is where the generalizations come in. Face balance take less effort to close because the face is not rotating open and creating that lag when you have that transition. So for someone who has a push off to the right, this might be a little bit easier for them because it's easier to square. It takes less effort for them to close it up. Now, that's all the theory. Does it really make a difference? Or is it a marketing myth? Let's take a look. I have got a putting launch monitor from Odyssey. It records your face angle, the strike point, the putter rotation. It assigns performance ratings based on the cleanliness of the strike, how much the face angle was close to square. So I could record data and put specifics with it. All right. If you hate data, it's a good time to go for a coffee. If you're a real geek for data, stay here. This is really good. This is a download from my Odyssey Fits putting launch monitor. I have 3 different putters here for a golfer. Okay, if we start at the bottom, we have Stroke Lab Black double wide with a flow neck. That is a toe hang putter. The next one up is a Stroke Lab Black 7. DB means double bend hosel shaft. Double bend will give you a face balance every time. Then I have a number 10 Odyssey with a double bend. Now those big numbers to the right of it, those percentages, they are the performance score of that putter in those putters being able to generate closed or square club face, center strike points, and consistent rotation. So they take all those together and they give it a performance score. So if we look at the red box, that 2.2, that is an open club face of 2.2 degrees open at the moment of impact. This person has a toe hang putter. It gave him a 58% performance score. So if we follow with our theory, I'm going to take away some of that toe hang to help close that face up. So I take it away on my next putter up, and I go to the Odyssey Black 7, which is a double bend. I start closing that club face. I go from 2.2 to 1.6. Now, each one of these sets is 5 putts. So there's 5 putts in each set, so we're getting an average. We're average of 1.6. Now, that 73% underneath this, that is the consistency level of how that 1.6 was achieved. So averages are only good if they're consistently tight in together. A drive that's 50 yards left and another one that's 50 yards right is an average of 0, straight up the middle. But that's not really how it works, is it? A drive that's 1 degree or 1 yard right, 1 yard left is still 0. But I'm going to take that one over the 50 and 50 every time. So I've got a 1.6 degree open club face. I closed it 0.6 degrees. Then I go to another version of a double bend face balanced, a different style head. Now my face angle on those 5 putts is 0.5 degrees open versus 2.2. Not only that, but the consistency of how I got to 0.5 average is 99%, which means that all of those putts were in and around that 0.5. Now, so we had an open club face. We had a toe hang putter. We took away the toe hang, added face balance. We closed it up. Now, here is an interesting part. If we go down to that number 1 putter on the bottom, that Stroke Lab Black, right next to Flow where it says 18, that's February 18th, 1:27 p.m. That's when that set was conducted. The next one, February 18th, 1:32. The next one, February 18th, 1:36. This is 9 minutes for 3 different sets of 5. There were no lessons. There were no clinics. There was no practice. We instantly changed face angle by taking away that toe hang. So let's try a different one here. Okay, this is a left-handed golfer, so the positives and negatives have changed. We start at the bottom. We have a Stroke Lab Black 7 double bend. Double bend is face balanced. This one now has a closed club face. 1.1 is closed because of the left golfer. We have a double bend, which closes the club face easier because it's less resistance to weighting. So I want to eliminate that. So I'm going to add in a little bit of toe hang. I go to the Stroke Lab Black number 1. That's your Scotty Cameron Studio Select style putter. That CH means crank hosel. That's that plumber's neck hosel that is so popular. I take away the face balance easy closing. I give them something a little harder to close. I go from 1.1 to 0.2. That 1.1, this is where I go back to the 50 and 50 of the drives. That 1.1 was made up of a 17% consistency. So those 5 putts inside that 1.1 are all over the place to get to an average of 1.1. That 94, we're now down to 0.2 closed by taking away the face balance and giving them a toe hang. Okay, so we go from a 76% score to a 98% score of consistency and face squareness and cleanliness of strike. Now, what happens when a putter works for you? Well, here's the same putter, 3 sets within a 5-minute period. 15 putts, 5 minutes. 0.0 on the bottom. 0.2, 0.0. This is a putter that was fit for a golfer and that I tested it after we did the fitting over and over and over again. I ran around 10 sets like this to show the golfer that it worked. After about 10 sets, I'd throw their old putter back in and we'd see it plummet again. The consistency of getting those small numbers, 100%, 99%, 10%, and the time frame ranged from 323 to 328. Once again, no lessons, no practice, changed it. 99%, 99%, and 100%. This one's me, by the way. Okay. You think this stayed in my bag for a while?
That's a
Absolutely.
keeper.
Absolutely. Okay.
Not going to throw that one in the pond.
No. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to just jump back here for a second. We'll move on. Okay. We go back to our first slide when we did on this. We went from 2.2 open to 0.5 open. Well, what does that really do in a putt? Here's a chart that's based on basic geometry. Okay. Now, if I lose people on this, it's okay. This is only for the geekiest of all geeks of data people. You've got a putting hole. It's 4.25 inches wide. That means that if I aim at the center of the hole, I can only be a maximum of 2.125 offline before I miss the hole, half of the hole, the radius of the diameter. Okay. However, I can't be completely all the way 2.125 because the ball is 1.68 inches wide. So some of that ball has to be inside the hole or else it's not going to fall. And a lot of it has to be in the hole if I don't want it to be pace dependent. If all of that ball is outside the hole, or even 3/4 of it, then I don't have all of that half hole. Make a little bit of sense?
Yep.
Okay, so let's look at what happens. I take this chart down the left-hand side. These are the degrees of club face, either open or closed at the moment of impact. Across the top is the length of putt in feet. Oh, hang on. That is the length of putt in feet. So we have 2.125 inches that we can be off center before the putt misses the hole completely. Those are all the red. Everything in red is a putt that missed the hole completely because it's outside the actual physical size of the hole. It's farther than 2.125 inches offline of center. Now, the yellow are putts that are still somewhat inside the hole, and they can go in based on pace. So they are putts that are basically about 1.2 inches from the center to that 1.2 inches because they have ball width accounted for it also. Green is the entire ball is inside the hole and they're in there. So if we look at 0.5, which is where we went from 2.2 in our putting, at 0.5, that whole ball fits into the hole at 10 feet. So at 0.5 club face, I'm in at 10 feet. I'm still in for 20 feet, but 12, 15, and 20 are a little bit pace dependent. At 2 degrees offline, I don't pour it into the hole. I'm completely pace dependent on the first 3, which are yellow, up to 5 feet. And then from 5 feet, I missed the hole. So 2 degrees, I missed the hole at 5 feet. 0.5, I'm inside the hole at 20 feet. That's what happens when you shave off a degree or a degree and a half on a putter face angle at the moment of impact. So it makes a tremendous, huge difference. 5 degrees open or closed at impact, you missed the hole at 3 feet. Okay, 0.2, if we can get down there, that whole ball pours in the middle of the hole just like it's a bathtub. So if you can find something that allows the golfer to square their club face, that is a good putter selection for them. And that way we get here, and if there is a discrepancy or there's kind of a gray area of what putter is working best for someone, find a test, put a stripe on top of the ball, see if they can roll it with the stripe staying on top. That gives you a sign of open or closed club face. If they can find a putter that squares up, that's going to be better than any other putter that they can find because 90% of ball flight is determined by face angle. Hosel styles. The type of hosel, how the shaft intersects with the head, that can have a huge influence on how you see the putter face and how you can create center contact consistently or whether you have things that move away from you. But let me show you what I mean by this. Here's 3 different styles of hosels. The one on the left is the crank hosel. That's your plumber's neck. The one in the middle is a short slant. And then the one on the other side is a flow neck. Now, here's what happens. This is my experience. The putter on the left, when I'm having that in a dress position and I look down on it, because that crank hosel flows down and that line goes into the center of the face almost, I don't see the back end of the putter. So from that line back to the heel, I don't see that. It's blocked out. So for me, the putter heel starts at where that red line is. That makes it impossible for me to put the ball in the middle. I have a mental block about it. For me, that ball is going to be hit out on the toe because I'm only seeing the putter length from that red line to the toe. So I'm out on the middle somewhere where those 2 S's are in Odyssey. The next one, my sight line comes down and it's well behind the ball. It's well back from center. I see a lot of the putter head. Not only that, but the shaft is a little bit offset. It's reverse offset. It's kind of out over the front. So I can still see the heel. So I'm able to see the middle of the putter of where it actually is. And the same thing on the right one. Because that hosel design allows me to see the heel, it's pushed out, it's offset from the face, pushed out. I can see the whole putter, and I'm able to put the ball in the middle. Now, I played this one on the left for probably 25 years, and I struggled with it over and over and over again. I could not get a ball on the heel. I became a good putter because I learned how much of a mishit I was going to have, and I could work my weight that way. But that's not the way that we want to play. This may be different for other people, but if you find someone that's having trouble getting their putter to hit the ball in the middle of the face, you may just ask them, what do you see down here? Tell me where you see the putter heel and toe starting and finishing. What happens when we put data to that? Well, here's a 5-putt set with this. Those millimeters off, 6 and 7 millimeters off center. That's because I cannot get this ball to be hit in the physical middle of the putter face because I don't see the heel. To me, it starts at the red line and goes forward. So I move the ball up on the toe all the time of where I see middle being. When I go to something where I can see that whole heel, that impact strike drops down to 0s and 1s and 2s. I can get this in the middle of the club face. So I have great distance control with a putter like this. Any questions on that part so far? I've got putter questions coming up, but that's a lot of stuff so far.
That's good. All good.
All right, I'll keep it going. I know we're running late here. We're down to the very end here. How important are looks? Anybody want to chime in? Can you putt with a putter if it's ugly and you hate the look of it? It's the stuff. It's the part of the club that's really important. Can we putt with it if we don't like it?
I think we can, but we might not want to.
Exactly. Okay. Remember when I said at the very beginning of putter, mallets perform better, blades are more aesthetically pleasing and more popular for people. Here's a poll by My Golf Spy they did a couple of years back. 768 votes, online poll. Do you think looks impact how your putt performs? 78%, almost 80% said yes. So they put it to the test. They conducted a large focus group. They brought a bunch of people in. They had 50 golfers and 50 putters, all ranging in different styles and sizes and abilities of people. They data measured every single putt that everybody made in order to measure performance. So there was nothing subjective or nothing objective. 80% said looks mattered. So here's your looks versus performance. In the beige, they are the 1 through 5 ranked putters based on looks and what appeal to people the most. Okay, Tulane Madison, Bert Nardi, Carbon Holiday, and Tu Ping Answers. They were ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in looks. What do they have in common? They're all blades. Every one of them. Where did they perform in the rankings? 7th, 28th, 8th, 21st, and so on down the line. Now, what performed? Well, now look at the performance rank of these in the dark gray. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th performing putter based on data, based on results. And where did they rank in appeal when people ranked them before they hit them? 38, 42, 43. I have seen this hundreds and hundreds of times doing putter fittings. Here, give this a try. I think you'll like this one. Oh, I'm never going to play with that. That's ugly. And then the data comes up. Everything is square. Everything's center strike. Putts are rolling. They're pouring it in. And I go, you've never putted better in your life. Yeah, but I want the Scotty. Your eyes do not have to like what you see for it to perform. Data shows this over and over and over again. It doesn't really ever matter. Okay? Any questions on putters? We're pretty well finished. I've got about 3 minutes left after this. knowing
Sure.
what to look for if you have a student who's struggling, what you might want to suggest or recommend?
I have a question for you, Paul. Like, especially since you were talking about some of the different shafts, heels, positions, those kind of things. When I was experimenting with putters, and I didn't have any of this information, I was kind of going for looks. I was looking for something heavier. I was looking for feel, and I bought that big orange monster that Paul and I played golf together. You've seen me putt with that one, and that was a real big change for me because it was a face balance double bend putter, and I was used to a pretty wild toe hang putter previously. And the first thing I noticed was how upright it was, to the point where, because I didn't have any knowledge, I thought they screwed up this shaft somehow. They double bent it too far or something. I was, the toe was really high off the ground, and I found that I had to stand a lot closer, have a lot more of a vertical approach like a steeper approach to the putter. And now I'm really, really comfortable with it. It really works, and I had to take time to get used to it. Is it common for face balanced putters to be more upright?
No, usually the lie angle will be very consistent from model to model. So you
Okay.
may have just had one that was out of whack. You may have had one where the whole design was different than anything else, but most putters will be the same lie angle regardless of how the hosel intersects.
Okay. All right. I must have had something like
Yep.
an old used putter previously or something. No
Yep.
wonder I was struggling.
There's always going to be some things. If you get an arm lock putter or something, or broomstick, that's going to be more upright than something else. But generally, you're within a degree or two for most.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey, Paul, I have a question about, say, center shafted putters and rear shafted putters.
Okay.
Does that make would that make a difference for certain players? So you see a lot of players will be playing, there's more rear shafted putters out there, and there's just a handful of center shafted ones out there.
Well,
Does that make a difference, or?
Center shafted putters will be face balanced. And generally, you're going to see more heel shafted putters out there just because of the aesthetics than center shafted. Center shafted putters, you'll see less of them because generally they're ugly. And that's how people buy putters. They buy them based on looks. Also, some people will find it hard to strike the ball where the shaft is. It's just different things for different people. But it's basically another version of face balanced.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answered what you were looking for.
Yeah, no, I was just curious to know, like, just is it how people, like, depending how people pick a putter, is it how they stand over the ball, and what they're seeing? Like, I don't know if they go by comfortability. Like, is there a way for them to say, well, yeah, you should be playing with a rear shafted putter, or you should be playing with a center shafted putter, or, I mean, I guess you just have to try them out.
So I'll diverse here just for a second and then come back to you. I'm going to really wrap this up because I know we're gone way longer than I wanted. Toe hang and face balanced. If you look at the data and you look at the narrative on it, they talk about which one is suited best for a particular type of stroke. But isn't more important about what actually happens rather than what type of stroke you make?
Right.
So, there's, the common narrative is that a toe hang putter is better suited for an arc, because when you're making an arc, you don't want the face to rotate too quick because it's being closed during the arc, and so on and so on. But I never pay attention to that, and I only worry about what's happening at impact. Because if you tell somebody they have a inside out, an arcing swing, or somebody will tell you that they have a perfectly straight back and straight through, which is physically impossible, they'll start buying putters, and they may be doing something with their hands, so they're not getting the face closure that they want. So they're buying it based on what the design is theory on doing with a swing versus on the results. So everything should always be based on results. So putters, most people buy them, they go into a golf town or something, they pick up something that they like, they roll a couple of putts on a green that's designed and funneled to go into a hole. They're in the business of selling balls, selling clubs. And that they say, this is great. And then they take it and they go away with it. And they bought the thing that was the opposite of what they needed. And I see this a lot. So, if you find someone that does putter fitting, it's a really good experience to go through it. But if you're seeing a student that is just struggling with something and there's not an obvious explanation, just go back to kind of what we talked about and see if some of that makes a little bit of sense.
Oh, sorry, one more question. Can you just touch bases on the oversized grip for the putter?
Yeah, so the oversized grip, once again, I'll talk about theory. The oversized grip is that it takes some of your handsiness away from it. A smaller pistol grip, that pistol grip that kind of curves up and comes back in, they're usually pretty good for people who have a little bit of an arcing stroke. But once again, the player's delivery will override and cancel all that out if they're doing something different. Somebody asked earlier about big grips, said that if that feels better to you and is putting you at ease, then so be it. In theory, it slows down, takes away some of the handsiness, gets a little bit more pendulum, but it might be completely different. For every super stroke big putter grip that I put on, I cut one off of somebody else's club because they don't like it. So it's a mixed bag. It's trial and error.
Paul, I have one question.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Have you ever done any studies on relative to eye dominance?
Yes, I haven't done myself. I saw a lot of data on it. There were a couple of universities who did kinesiology studies, and they did so much data that it would mind boggle you. And there was some merit to it for sure. I mean, we've all seen the old example of, put the triangle up to your eyes and look at it and stuff. You really, it's kind of trial and error of what works for people, and there is some merit to it for sure. I forget the data on what it came out to be, but I think if you research it, it's like a technical spec paper from NASA on the ones that I saw. You got to be really committed to read it. It's I don't have a clear answer for you on that one.
All right.
Which is why I run data, because then it doesn't matter what your eye dominance is. I'm selling based on the ability for that club face to work.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. Thank you.
All right. So we're at the very end here. So we've covered all that. So now, when should you focus on a lesson? When should you focus on a fitting? You're out on the range, your student is there. This is when I would do a lesson first, when they are obvious things to fix. Grip, alignment, ball position, things that are not involved with a fitting. If I see that, I'm going to deal with those first. So even if someone came in for a fitting, if I'm not going to fit them with a ball position that's out of whack, or an alignment that's 45 degrees off, or a bad grip, I'm going to try and correct that first, because that's my responsibility. And I'll do a fitting first if someone has an obvious something wrong. Somebody's in there and they've got a club that's way too long or way too heavy, or we see the cast downs. The new golfers always end up with the cast downs. They're coming in, they got little wooden head clubs. Nobody in the world could play those anymore. They got little tiny blade irons, or they've got the $69 Northwestern set that was sold in 1982 to someone. These types of things, I'm going to deal with those. Or someone's toe angle is off so much that they can't even get the club to the ground. I'll deal with those first. But generally, I'm going to try and make the most sensible correction before we proceed, regardless whether it was a fitting or a lesson.
Yes, sir. Good job.
That is it. Anybody have a question? I know it's a lot of stuff. I rambled and did a lot of talking, but it's a passion. I can't stop.
Not a question, but I want to give you a plug there that folks, go check out Paul Kelly Golf on YouTube. He posts a lot of fitting equipment videos, as well as some lessons. Recently, you did one on lie angles, the impact of changing lie angles. That one was really popular recently, and you did a fitting just the other day with a shaft fitting with a gentleman. It's really informative. So I recommend our membership go over and subscribe to Paul's YouTube channel and check out some of that stuff. It's good.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Any curiosities, guys? I know I kept you way longer than you expected to be, but I got no sympathy for you. I'm on the East Coast at 10:30 here. You guys can live with the earlier time.
Hey, Paul,
We like
Paul,
it.
you did great. I think that you blew it out of the water, and thanks for putting so much time and effort into it to make it special. I've been sitting here thinking, how can I get out of this meeting so I can go practice my putting? But that's it's a bad thing.
So if I have one suggestion for everyone, it was one of the things I said at the beginning is, if this stuff is outside your realm and this is not stuff that you're comfortable, you're not doing it, align yourself with a fitter. It's not someone who's going to take your clients away usually, but you need to be able to double team and have somebody, it's like when you go into a store and you ask somebody, do you have this? And they say, no, but you know what? I think I'm going to call down the road and see if this store has it. They didn't lose you as a customer. They just gained you as a customer by doing that because they went the extra mile. If you can help your student, they're going to remember who it was that helped them. So, this is a really good business model also, to be able to align yourself with someone if you're not doing it. But I'm sure that Mark will probably post this like he's done with the other ones. And if you want to go back and revisit parts of it on your own, you can pick up a couple of things and, at your own pace when it's not me just going. But there's a lot of things there that you can pick out and help your student with by being aware of, if this is happening, it might be this.
Paul?
Yes.
Is there a good correspondence course you can take for golf club fitting?
I'm not sure. I'm not really aware. Without the hands-on and being able to see different things, I'm not sure how productive it would be. Years and years ago, I went down to Ohio, and at that time, Maltby and Golfsmith were the two leaders in all of this. And I went to Ohio because Texas was too far out of my range, and spent a week down there and did a club fitting course. And that was back in the 80s sometime. I'm not quite sure how you would do it online. I know there must be, because people sell anything online. And I don't know if it would be good or bad. I don't have an answer, to be honest.
Yeah, because I don't think there's anything out here in Vancouver.
A lot of it is trial and error, and you get some old clubs and start trying some things and see how they work. And, there's no substitute for having the data at your disposal, though, because the data is what convinces people, and it lets them leave outdated notions behind. Here, this is working. I know, but I don't like it.
Right. What about a line on getting the adjustment tools and the scales and the weights and all that?
GolfWorks, golfworks.ca sells all that kind of stuff. It can be fairly inexpensive and it can be really expensive. It's no matter how deep you want to get into it.
Mm-hmm. I'm a hands-on person. I love fixing and working with things. So,
Dale, the golfworks.ca, they also have done club fitting classes, but it's in person. So you'd have to come to Ontario. They're out of Ottawa.
Well, I was there this summer.
How were you? You didn't come see me?
I didn't, because it was we drove out, and my kids are in New Brunswick, so it's a 6-day drive to get out and a 6-day drive to get back. So I didn't get the chance to stop in. I wanted to, though.
Yeah. So in Ottawa, they've done that. Somebody's saying, I'm not sure they've continued with the fitting courses. No, but Greg said that. But I actually think I've had contact with the guy who did the sessions for GolfWorks, and he would do a training, but only in person. He wouldn't do, and he's out of Collingwood, actually.
Yeah, I really don't think there's a tremendous benefit of online. It's my gut feeling. You've got to kind of get your hands into stuff and see how things work, and how are you going to? Yeah, it's just. I think it's certainly better than nothing.
Right. Well, I've done all my own clubs, so I have that experience. But get that certification behind your name makes a big difference.
Yeah, and just always remember with this is that everything we did when we talked about lie angles and not worrying about a lie angle reading, and talking about swing weight and not worrying about swing weight reading, and putters that looks don't matter. Basically, it all comes down to that the end justifies the means. If you can get something that works, then don't worry about whether it's out on a limb. You can experiment yourself a little bit, Dale, and try a longer club, see what happens. Make notes, record what happens, get the tendencies, shorten it up. Everybody's got lots of junk clubs kicking around at one point or another.
Oh, yeah,
But
I got a ton.
the end justifies the means. Don't worry about how things happen, just if they happen. And sometimes you'll get an opposite of what the theory says, and that's why you should only work with the ends. And when I explain this to people and they say, yeah, but it doesn't seem right, I say, look, if you're in the NHL and you stand in front of the net and they score 50 goals off your shin pads, that's $12 million a year salary, right? Nobody cares how they went in, right? Stand in front of the net. This is what's going to happen with Corey Perry now, right? He's going to get out there with McDavid. They're going to bank him in off his back. We're going to the cup. Folks, that's it. I'm talked out.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Paul. Well done.
So if anybody has a follow-up question or you want to review this sometime, my link is at the end of it. You can get me and I will answer everything for you. And if there's any demand, we'll do another one on different data and different topics another time.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks, Paul.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, we just to let you know, we had 27 people on, which other than giving free watches away is right up near the top. I guess Larry Rinkers was pretty high too, but it shows that people are interested in club fitting, but more importantly that they're interested in learning, and that's what hopefully we're providing an opportunity for everyone. So
perfect.
Thanks for doing this.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Paul.
If I can throw one last little plug in, I know you've got one coming up in the near future sometime for social media. Greg is absolutely fantastic at this stuff. Go in and check out his channel also. He's got a lot more polish on his production than I do. We're at different ends of the spectrum. And you join in with him when he does his, and he'll show you how to shine.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
All right,
Awesome.
guys.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Yep. And we do look forward to Greg's YouTube presentation coming up probably next in February, once we get through this Toronto Golf Show.
The pressure's on now. Thanks, everyone. This
We'll
is
see you
great.
in May, Mark.
Yes. Yeah, we'll see you guys out west. Thanks.
Absolutely. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.